Hi guys.
Hello. How's it? How are you doing today?
Yeah, straight from a hotel room in Marrakesh, and I'm doing all right.
Awesome. You're looking good. It's great to see you. Today, I think we're talking about the Taoist. Is that right?
No, it's just okay. So today I'm beta testing a new talk from my ever evolving series of There's a few talks that are just like a sentence and an emoji, and they're my like uh, slow attempt at building a knowledge of work that supports people that do what I do in the DAO space, which is sort of undercover 360-degree facilitation. It's an effort to put that knowledge set into something that's replicable and workable and people can study or at least can ask me about, and then can be more people like that. So if you catched the talk that's on the Taoist YouTube, A Life Well Spent, or Of Modes and Clouds, which went on air and Shelling Point at Eve Never, this is sort of the continuation of that series, and it's called
Excellent.
Awareness of the Continuum.
Awareness of the continuum. Awesome. Thank you so much. The floor is yours. If you need any help or support, I'll be here.
Go on, we're just going to share the screen, and then we're going to have that awkward moment where we have a little fractal thing going, and then I'm going to do this.
Okay.
And can you see it? Is
Yes,
that
I can.
correct?
You're good.
Perfecto. Right. So, guys, whoever's out there who there's a set of people working at every organization or more. There's a type of work that set of people do that never ends, never gets done. There's no provable outcome that can say, hey, here's wrapped up in a bowl and done. Thank you. I'm going away. The people doing that work, that type of work, is what I call polarity management. There's never a perfect stance to be taken on a problem. It's all about keeping the tension and optimal state. And those people are the people who have to be aware of the continuum, because you can't really just implement or install or change into something. You have to transform there. Right. So if you've seen me talking about this before, this is me talking about it more in a little bit more detail. I didn't have all the time that I wish I had to prepare this, so please attack me as much as you feel like. And even if you don't feel like, attack me a little bit more so we can sharpen this little blade into a lightsaber of love, I guess. Okay, so subtitle is An Action Reflection Set for Hyper-Aware Practitioners Acting Within DAOs. So again, I've been annoying everybody with this name. I'm trying to give names to things that are hard to name. And the notion of the hyper-aware practitioner, it's somebody who is, let's say, driving a very fast car or a jet, or just dealing with high stakes problem solving like a jujitsu fighter, and there's no right action. You just have to roll with the punches and try to find the best solution available to you at the time. And then all the actions and reflections you can take to be better prepared or to serve that community within that type of practicing, right? Um, because I don't see a chat and I don't see a feedback, I'm going to actually invite Pengs to interrupt me if anybody has a powerful question or if they need more time to digest some concept. And these are the people that are often called facilitators. But I put here between quotes, one, because I don't like the name, because the role of the facilitator, in the sense that I'm going to explain today, is not always to make things easier. That's where the word facilitation comes from. So it's fácil from in Portuguese or in Spanish or in probably Latin, whatever. Um, but so this is the facilitator in the deepest sense of the facilitator, like the meta organizational janitor kind of a creature. It's not just the workshop facilitator who is going to get that group in a room to do this or product design their way to this. Although that is a part of the job, what I'm going to go into today is actually everything that's happening around what we call the intervention space, the moment where you're actually within workshop. Okay, so there's a lot of things and they're less glamorous and they never get talked about. And I actually want, if Andre one day watches this talk, we should sit down on how to price and evaluate this, and also give the reputation NFTs for these types of skill sets that are hard even to name, and I will attempt them today. The important concept here is that the difference between this type of work and the work that I was saying before, in terms of like product design or website design or anything that didn't exist and now exists because the work happened, we would call those change, right? So I might be brought into an organization to just set up a team to do X. That all of this is change. You can just install it. You can come in, bring the resources, and build the shelf. Build, like, buy the fridge, put the fridge in the kitchen, plug the fridge in, it's working. Transformational work, it's not necessarily better, but it is dealing with a living system while it's operating, and you cannot pause it. So that's what we're going to explore. The essence of work that's done, that once that work is done, you cannot change back into what there was before. I can take the fridge out of the room again. I can undo a bunch of work. I can reset a team to a certain state. But all of the lived experience of the team, of the organization, of the knowledge management of that group of humans in the state of the market or the family or any other subset of social group that you're seeing, it has been transformed. The people managing and sensing and designing for the transformation process, that's the people I'm talking about. If you're watching this now and you say, hey, that's what I didn't have these, I didn't know how to say this. It's for you. It's for you. This is a thing, this exists, and you live under a relative amount of tension constantly because there's no right answer to the problems. You're managing polarities. You're sticking with the trouble and trying to make sure that everything is okay at the end of the day, although you're never going to be 100% sure you made the right choice. And if you are, you're probably wrong. So in this sense, transformation is larger than change. Not that it's better or more important, but it's more responsible. It is considering the entire historical component of that organization. That's why the fancy ass name, awareness of the continuum. And that's also one of the things I would like to broadcast to the at least the world changer crypto person type, that sometimes we think that we're going to build this as if it was a software and we're going to put it in there and the world will change because the inherent capabilities of technology. And while that mentality is overabundant, we will likely fail. Any capacity that is going to be learned at the society civilizational level, it will depend on awareness of the continuum, on a transformation approach over a change approach. And this is not about when you clock in at 5 and you clock out at 9. This is the work of people who work with capital W, who have a calling, a labor in life, and they will wake up and go to bed thinking about these things. And if this feels useless to you, I mean, go do something else. If this feels like somebody has seen your activity by just framing it this way, come with. So the thing is, living social systems, they cannot be paused. They're constantly reacting to vibes and lore. Sorry, I needed to roll my eye as I'm saying that, but that's the words we have. You cannot just like say, okay, you can't do what Celsius did. You can't just say, hey, nobody is going to have any new opinions or throw away any old opinions. Nothing is going to change on your mindset while I'm figuring this out. You don't have that option. You need to make everything you do or do not do counts as an intervention in times of social transformation. And in sometimes like this, the shift between a bull market to a bear market, or a time of abundance and a time of scarcity, be it perceived or actual. Once you're at the helm of the social formation of these social systems, you're going to see time accelerates to incredible moment. Like a lot of stuff is going to happen a lot faster than it did before. And everything that you were working at yourself as a practitioner, as a hyper-aware practitioner, during those times of plenty or peace, they're going to come into play now, right? And if you're truly understanding the importance of this type of approach, you're not really resting that much ever, right? And so the talk is about this. How do we intervene on living systems, and how do we maintain ourselves prepared to understand that interventions are not only dependent on you choosing to intervene, that they sometimes interventions intervene upon the system, and you are there at the front lines, at the crossfire, and all the information and sensed information that you gathered about that system are now going to come into play. All your almost like socially eclectic capacities to intervene in that system are going to come into play. So the question is like, what happens to water? And I wish it was like a stage and we had an interactive talk and you guys could have shot back the things I'm talking about, but it's not going to work. So what happens to water at 99 degrees Celsius? Nothing, right? You can keep water at 99 degrees Celsius forever at ideal conditions, and it won't change state. It will just be water, warm water, maybe uncomfortably hot, but it will stay water. And the process of state change will only kick in once the system crosses a certain threshold of energy. So this is both a useful reflection for when you want to cause that transformational state change, or when you want to maybe know that you're reaching a limit that will cause transformational state change to ensue. And so what are the tools at your disposal? So I want to talk about two concepts, and if you ever follow the DAOs, we have all this little sayings about flow over control. And we never talk about the angry sister of flow, which is pulse, right? Pulse and flow are one of the two fundamental types of movements at the disposal of the facilitator or the hyper-aware social practitioner, which is basically allowing things to remain as they are, reflections to keep progressing in the direction that they're going, and or throw a wrench in the status quo and cause deeper reflection, right? I just realized I could do this and it looks prettier. Okay, let's keep going. And everyone thinks that flows is better. And I really don't. I feel that there is a place for attrition and conflict. When I'm not in a very good mood today, but when I'm in a better mood, I say that if it wasn't for friction, nobody would ever have an orgasm. So that's kind of the joke. Like, we need a little bit of friction for things to make sense, because the satisfied animal sleeps, right? So if after you have a beautiful large meal and your belly's full, you're just going to go and doze off. You're not necessarily going to sleep, but your guards are going to be down. You're going to see things in a more complacent way. And that's why when you want somebody to, like people say, wine and dine them, right? That is kind of the thing. You want the satisfied social system that doesn't have any outside enemies or pressures or things coming from the outside, something to conspire against, or even within a little bit of certain amount of strife, might become too flaccid to do anything. And once that state of flow becomes an overly abundant and flaccid state of flow, it's a good idea to introduce pulse. And if pulse is constant, the system might become indeed non-respondent. It might become numb to the state of pulse, and things are not going to work. So there's a component to management polarities. There's a component of rhythm. There's a musical quality to this. And you are the sensing mechanism that needs to decide. And ideally, you'll have a choice, because some personalities don't have a choice. You know these people, the people who are constantly diffusing conflict just because they don't even think about it, and the people who are constantly sending alarm signals into the social elastics between us, just needing, asking, pulsing. and they don't even know why they're doing it either. So the first step here is to become reflexive enough to understand, to at least form your own capacity of assessment, and then your own vocabulary of pulses and flows, and expand them and play with them in an artistic way over your lifetime, right? And this will help everywhere, from dating life to work life to cooking to designing, any journey that users will go through, including communication strategies or a product. It's really weird to give a talk just to my computer. Usually I see at least a chat. So the question is, when do you pulse, right? When do you pulse? I navigate by two things. One is boredom, of course, but I think that the most important one is, if you're in a position of relative authority, and here this word means something different than like police or governmental authority, but like if you're in a position where you're respected and people are willing to play with you, they're seeking for your opinion, they're interested in your opinion, or in your participation in the social games that are being played. And we can disguise them as productivity, we can disguise them as flirting, we can disguise them as clubbing. It's all social games in the end, makes no difference. So if you're bored and you want to leave the game, but you're responsible for the game, that's a good idea of when to pulse, right? And how to pulse, it would be a longer conversation. It's a consultancy. Hire me for a conversation, because you need to do this with contextual navigation. In contextual navigation, nothing more is than a weird name that I gave to being aware of the continuum, to having had built a sequential series of assessments and observations on the continuum for long enough until you feel you have enough emotional, spiritual armor and authority and participation and legitimacy within the continuum that you want to intervene in, that at least you're legitimate enough that if you pulse too hard, you won't break either the system or your right to participate in it. And this takes a lot of time, because people tend to think of facilitators as the guy who shows up and just does an intervention, right? A conflict mediator, somebody who comes in a meeting, a consultant who comes and just will look at your thing in 3 hours, and then they'll charge you a lot of money per hour, and they'll say, you should do this, 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 this. That is not the type of work I'm talking about. And as someone who has been forced several times to work in this style, I can tell you that these interventions, although they tend to design beautiful ideas, they very rarely or almost never get implemented. And when they do, the implementation never survives, because the system itself wasn't considered in the solution that should serve it. And that is always, in my opinion, a bad idea. So what are the stages of the practice of social development? How can I introduce you to some of the stages, at least that you respect each one of them, like we were listening from Andre now, and thanks having this little exchange in the end about you should plan stuff. I guess like in the end, the most important idea I have to convey here is that there are several stages of planning, that the intervention moment is dangerous, that the social, economical, spiritual, and emotional raison d'être, the reasons of being of that system, they could not survive an intervention. And interventions need to be studied quite thoroughly, right? First step that I would say is the stakeholder constellation mapping, which is basically trying to understand every social group or person that is involved. And even the ones that are very only slightly involved, all the way to the ones paying the bills, all the way those who are most oppressed, all the way to those receiving the most pressure, putting all of these things on paper or in a Miro, and legitimately doing as many perception movements as you can, alone or with other constituents, until you have something that at least hasn't forgotten anyone and mostly understands the incentive designed between those people. And assuming you're ignorant is the best approach here, because the satisfied animal sleeps. So you should pulse within yourself and really pressure yourself to questions than you always did before, because there is no guarantees this will never be right. But ideally, these support relationships with these systems as a facilitator, they're going to sustain over a very long time. And then intervention over intervention over intervention, you are likely going to come to a deep understanding of that constellation and be able to serve it much better. Or in the worst case scenario, understand where you fail at serving it and assess the missing resources, right? So once you've done enough diligence with enough intensity in this constellation mapping, you should, and this is often overlooked. People say, hey, we need to assess this problem in our organization. We're having this misunderstanding, low productivity, or we have this conflict. Let's just do a workshop 2 weeks from now. Everybody comes. And then there's a bunch of assumptions that, one, everybody should be there. Who is everybody? How long should it last? Where? Is it physical? Is it digital? Do people start alone? Do people start by themselves? Is it a scavenger hunt, or is it just a meeting or a debating meeting? Is a work session? There are many, 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 many things to consider. This is an entire profession that approximates a level of artistry that, like me as a sculptor, painter, poet, etc., 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 I don't feel that any of these other practices are as deep as this, what I'm talking about. And I hope that this actually is touching to people, so that I can keep bringing my old notebooks from when I was in training and trying to find ways to bring more in. It's so deep to the point that it's almost, how to say, when it's old, anachronistic. Like, people don't have time to look at this shit this deep anymore. So keeping it simple is, what is the theory of change? So one assumption you have to back, and the basic assumption that you have to back is, once we do this intervention, what is now possible that wasn't before? What is the main thing we're looking for, right? So once you have that design, take that design to the constellation, right? Doesn't matter if you design the best intervention in the world and the constellation doesn't buy into it, you're not going to be able to do it. Then once you do that, the people who are going to be within that intervention, they need to want to play with you. So once this is kind of, we're crossing from planning to actually doing, but it's a whole process, because you have the invitation phase where you cannot guarantee that everybody will want to come. And in decentralized systems and DAOs, this is even more critical. Do not feel that you have to rush the process of getting people to like playing with you, because it's worth to spend 80% of their time available getting together and getting the vibes right to do one thing, than trying to do 5 things and achieving nothing because people were not actually there. Then intervention time comes. And sometimes it might be just saying the right joke at the right time, at the right room, and everything will change. But if you did all of those other steps correctly. And then assessing what happened. And assessing what happened is the trickiest fucking thing in the world. If you ever had a fight with a girlfriend or boyfriend, or your polyamorous, polycule group of paramours, whenever there's strife and conflict, it's really hard to have people agreeing on what actually happened. What happened in that room? So collecting the different points of view on something that happened, which we don't do enough. We just walk away from every experience in our lives thinking we know exactly what happened. If you actually had a chance to always ask the 5-10 people that were at a place at the same time what they saw, you'd be surprised how many different perspectives there will be, right? And then after all of these perspectives have been gathered, what is actually possible now that wasn't before? Does it include the original theory of change? And what else, right? You might have aimed lower and got something nicer. You might have gone completely in another direction. So before restarting the cycle, because after this, the constellation, the stakeholder constellation might have changed. The paying client might have changed. The boss, the authority structure might have changed. And don't fool yourselves. Even in the most decentralized DAO of DAOs, there is temporary verticality that forms to make decisions. So your awareness of all of this is a big dance, right? And from here, we started all over again. Now, okay. Now, do I still have time? Are people still interested? Because from here, I was going to give my personal opinions on how to do this, but it's
definitely.
not necessary.
Yeah, I definitely still interested, Felipe, and we're the end cap. So yeah, please feel free to keep going.
Cool. I'm just gonna do real quick. When I design this stuff, I never face the snake head on. Okay, you might have something you want to say, you might have a point of view that you want to prove. Just don't. Just don't. It's always about the experiential process. The solution has to come from within the system. The moment you use your authority as the space holder, as the practitioner in that space to plant an idea in, uh, you're gambling, because if there's anybody actually intelligent there, which in the crypto space I would always assume there's someone more intelligent than me in the room, always, or maybe the entire room. um, you're you're basically throwing away all the authority building that you did, all the process, because you're the one thing you can't do is represent yourself. The other thing is, the more you face malicious action head on, the more likely it is that you will be faced with even more malicious strategies to disenfranchise your capacity to neutralize the maliciousness, especially if they're actually highly self-aware, which puts you in a shitty position, kind of like Sith Jedi kind of thing, right? Because if you're actually doing the Jedi way, you cannot employ those tactics back, right? So people will use most like high school level social tactics against your process because you kind of single them out. So I always go in a spiral, right? Again, as I already said it before, I wouldn't try to bring external solutions too much into it. Like, oh yeah, I read this book, everybody should read this book, and then we just do what's in the book. It might work if you are super oblique about it and the group comes to that naturally. But external solutions, in my experience, are never left alive. And then you end up in this weird social validation Lockhart problem, where people will learn the idealized external solution, let's say design sprints faster or holacracy. They'll just learn that faster, read the book faster, and then they will, even if softly, use their knowledge of that framework to raise their status. And we do this without even noticing, guys. We all do this. It's not even like a joke. And it's not because the people who do this are not idiots. We're all susceptible to this type of like Molochian seduction, right? So another thing that I really try to do, whenever I have an ideology of myself, I state it and I don't bring it into the process as much as I can, except two things: ignition and integrity. And there's a whole talk just about ignition, or at least a good part of it, which is the of modes and clouds. And there isn't one about integrity yet, and I'll get there. But ignition is when people are turned on, like on their own supply of energy. They're legitimately excited about a thing, right? So you're trying to get ignition going when nobody needs to be told what to do or what to look at. They're legitimately surfing their own wave, right? And integrity is such a hard word to explain. It's much easier if I had like 100 works of art to exemplify. But you can see when people are doing things as a result of what they've learned by following their ignition, or when they're just trying to emulate something that is out of them. It's not integral. They're trying to be like kitsch humans. They're trying to simulate something outside. So I'm sniffing for the presence of ignition and integrity independently of the social status of the person in the system. Because although ideally, the more ignited and integral people would rise to the top, that is not the case, not even more than 50% of the time. It's not so horrible either, in my opinion, but I'm sniffing out for this. And I use these two energetic signatures, it's kind of hippie to say, but like this kind of like social textures of ignition and integrity to kind of base my judgment more than ideology. And I try not to tolerate ideology in my mind as I'm doing the things. You can't not tolerate ideology in the work, because sometimes you're going to be doing this with highly idealistic people, and they should not be disenfranchised for having those ideologies. You should just not be seduced by it. This slide might need a rephrase. I'm not saying throw away your religious participants. And then avoid excessive framework tendency. Whenever there's too much of one, like, oh, this is a design thinking workshop. Oh no, this is a design sprint. This is a world cafe. This is no, because we're following the sustainable goals things. Anything that turns your mind off, anything that turns into a crutch, anything that creates too much flow in your design process, anything that makes you unaware of your ignorance about the system is your enemy. So you might pull from here and there naturally because you know these things and you can come and take them. But the moment you see yourself trying to follow a frameworked process from that is external, instead of serving and giving your sensing capacity to the system you're serving, you're probably going to get fucked, because the person that wrote that framework has 0% contextual navigation, understanding, collateral baggage of the system you're serving. So they didn't design that shit for your problem. You need to design for your problem, for the people you love, for the people you serve, right? And the only way to do this, and this is a whole nother talk, is learning how to see, sense, and react to sensations of bloom and decay. What are the vibrant new social forms, coordination, tendencies, and trends that are blossoming? And what are the ways of being, styles, parts, groups, strategies that are decaying in that organization? And what is causing the bloom and decay of those things? This, if you wanted a place to start in terms of becoming aware of the continuum, if you realize through this talk that you are not, the exercise of describing by writing, by drawing, by whatever to yourself where bloom and decay is around you, can be in the room that you are right now, will start to sharpen the sensorial organs that your imagination hides in, or actually, well, the sensorial organs that are hidden in your imagination as a hyper-aware practitioner. Because dream is a limb or a tongue, something like that. I wish I could talk more about this, and I will, in a way that is respectful to the size of the idea and all the things that my weird little masters have passed on through the centuries, and Goethe and all these guys. But if you like what I've been doing, if you know me, all I can say for you is that this is more useful than not, and it's worth looking into. So ideas are like the hair on your head, and the intellectuals wear wigs, and I misspelled wear, which is even better. I think I'll just leave it like this. Sorry for the rush talk. This is a beta test. Give me as much feedback as possible. If it is gruesome, send me DM. And thanks for letting me go over 8 minutes. Sorry, guys.
No worries. It's wonderful to have your perspective, and I think when you raised three different topics that all were about kind of creation and passion and like the will to kind of get things going. So pulse, ignition, and bloom are all kind of that foundation and like how things go from the small seed or idea to like actually getting it going. But then the flow and the decay, and also like while it's in the process, I think that entire life cycle is critical to how we flow with an organization as well as our energy, right? So I think it's kind of like a microcosm, and you can say the same things that you say apply to an organization also apply very much to a person, and the way that you've got to kind of
It's a
hone.
crazy little fractal thing. Yeah, it's like fractal rhythms. I mean, if you really want to get bored, let me find the parallels between this and physics. Some other time.
I think one of the other things that you brought up that we haven't heard yet that is a great way to elicit change was intervention. And,
Yeah.
obviously intervention means that you're taking a hard stance. Things were kind of off track. Is that right for intervention? Or does
Well,
intervention?
in facilitator speak, intervention means anytime an impression is made upon the system And more explicitly, it would be like when you schedule a meeting, when you do a MetaFest is an intervention, you know? But if you keep reflecting deeper, you're going to realize that every time you exist, you're intervening. And then there is this, let's say, degrees of intervention. But I would say that here, the threshold of when I would call it an intervention is when you get several people paying attention to the same thing at the same time because you ask them to. And then it brings that gigantic level of responsibility that I was talking about. If you were present, you're one of the few people that were present with me executing the, not incredibly deeply, but as closest as possible to this in the crypto space, which was the Creator Geta program being born. And you remember that it started with a stakeholder constellation mapping, and then we all together mapped the entire company, that we didn't have that map before. And then the whole, do you remember all of that?
I do, and I think that that's really key to any organization is understanding who's responsible, defining the expectations, and that constellation map is also something we saw with Deacon too. Deacon had a few different constellation maps that were all about kind of expectations and organization. And yeah, I think especially as we've talked about squads versus these larger kind of vague organizations, we see a lot more kind of control over the flow. There was a lot of interest and like spark. But now it's not a sprint, right? It's like all about endurance and making sure that we have purpose. And so yeah, each one of these interventions that we take is like a step towards a different purpose or other things that we can take then, right?
Exactly. And there's no right answers. And you know, and I think like where this was something that was used only at like super high level NGO and corporate level kind of things. I think at DAOs they become somewhat more relevant, more important, and so I see a lot of people becoming facilitators, but this knowledge is there's no schools for this very much, and especially not ones like mine, because this is something that you have. I forgot the name of the program, and there's a thing in Scotland, but then there's just people in South Africa, but then it all meets in Brazil, where it needs to contend with the like development practitioning in the third world with a lot of violence and like severe tension happening. So like I started my career like Occupy movement. I had to take a shovel from a guy's hand or stop like people stoning each other. I remember one day that I had to convince this very large man that was super strong, and he had somehow dislocated his shoulder, and I was the one who put his shoulder back in place with a towel, like when you put a towel under it, because I actually dislocated my shoulder when I was young skateboarding. So I have a lot of experience putting the shoulder. That's why I started working out, because I needed to keep the shoulder in place because I didn't want to like operate. So I had this like huge guy, but it hurts a lot. The first time you dislocate your shoulder hurts so much. And this guy was just crying, this big guy just crying in my arms while I'm like putting his arm, like that's the kind of conflict I was raised mediating. So let's see what the bear, like this bear, I think it's going to be super interesting. And the people who feel this calling, I want to support you on having larger understanding around this. It's not because it came from me, but I can help suggest how to think about it. And now we have a research center for this in Lisbon with the MetaHub. So everybody's welcome to come.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that education and that sharing is critical. As you say, there's not really a manual or a playbook for any of the stuff that we're doing. It's all kind of cutting edge and new to a lot of us. And I think the ethos that we're building is not something that you can digest overnight. So thank you very much for supporting the education process and also all the work that you do with the Taoist, amongst all the other amazing things. Love your art. Very gifted. So thanks for joining us on MetaFest and the presentation. Yeah, I think it was a great presentation. I'll be happy to give you some more feedback. Where can people find out more about?
Yeah, the DAOs.co, metahub.thedaos.co, and the DAOs.co/Dawn, or the DAOs.co/metahub. They all work, and they're all connected now in one website. So if you just click around the Daoist, you can see the things. And to hit me up on Telegram, it's Elementary Complexity, at Elementary Complexity altogether. If you never understood why the fuck my name is now Elco, that's why. It's Elementary Complexity simplified, I guess. I've been lazy with this character change, but I'm severely burnt out right now, thanks, and I'm trying to get back.
Well, self-care is critical. So, make sure that you find time for yourself. Make sure that you make time to care for Felipe. And
I was trying to hire somebody to do my self-care for me, but then I realized I was understanding it the wrong way.
Yeah, you've got to literally make time for yourself, because otherwise the fire is pure, right? We're gonna keep burning, and at some we've got to rest to make sure that the integrity of what we're doing and it is true to who we are too. If we burn too much, then as you say, we can burn ourselves out, and then then the ability to deliver and follow through on our duties is significantly impacted. So yeah, self-rest, self-care, and support, especially in hard times, is key. So make sure that you reach out to other people that are in your community and that you feel are worth learning from and sharing with, because Web3 is all about breaking down walled gardens and making sure that we share information. So thanks a lot for helping facilitate that and reduce friction, even though it's important.
Or sometimes cause it. See what around things. You also need to rest, man. How long have you been doing this today? 8 hours? Go to bed, man.
So it's 7 hours a day. I had a meeting that lasted until 2 a.m. So I got about 4 hours of sleep. Yeah, it's the life. I'm gonna take naps, but yeah, I feel like I'm burning from three ends, like a 3-stick candle, or like a cross joint. Maybe.
I was just gonna say cross joint.
Yeah. I like your shirt though. Nice shirt.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Eat Denver. We were making these. So this is the one that I picked out and made. So pretty elegant, straight down the middle. Got my tag there. But yeah, this is one of the zero waste design shirts too. So love the Meta Factory support. So thanks a lot for
I'll be back. I'll be back soon to the MFers. You goddamn MFers. Ciao, guys. Enjoy MetaFest.
Ciao. Talk to you later.